So let's give it some time. And if you have any questions or if you want to give us a brief about what kind of company you own or the industry you belong, just type down in the comments and we'll see what our target audience looks like today so we can address everybody's concerns and questions. So we have around 40 participants. So let's give it some more time till we get started.
Yeah.
So how do you feel like about corporate tax in general? I mean, this is a very, very fresh topic. I mean, it's like a very significant change to the UAE, tax policies right now, right? So how do you feel about this whole reform as such?
This is the hot topic now in the UAE. It's a huge change in the UAE structure in terms of the taxes that was recently introduced in the UAE. But this is in line with the global change for the taxes to have minimum standards for the tax all over the jurisdictions. When you are looking at the corporate tax regime, it's still a competitive regime compared to other jurisdictions. The tax rate as well is very competitive compared to the all over the world. The 9% is very competitive to the other regimes.
Absolutely. I know it's not a tax-free haven anymore. That's how we used to love to call Dubai as. But however, as Mohammed said, again, we haven't introduced us yet. Just waiting for people to just join so that we know who you're talking to, their expertise, so that and I'm sure they will be able to answer all your questions. So let's see. Yeah, we have around 60 plus people on the call right now. So yes, we'll start slowly. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Neha Thomas, and I am the head of marketing at Creative Zone, one of the largest business setup consultancies in Dubai. Uh, our primary, responsibility is helping entrepreneurs set up their businesses in Dubai and the UAE. We also extend our services in Qatar and Saudi Arabia, and we also assist in numerous other, business support services. And with this recent introduction of tax, we have an extended wing, Creative Zone Tax and Accounting. So I have Mr. Zishan Tour. He's the general manager of Creative Zone Tax and Accounting. So I will have Zishan introduce himself first.
Sure. Thank you, Neha. And thank you everyone for joining us. So my name is Zishan. As Neha said, I've been with Creative Zone Tax and Accounting for 5 years almost. And it's always been a learning journey, a journey that we've learned on. We started with VAT, and then we had different regulations come into place. And now the most hot topic right now is corporate tax. We've been able to help our clients who needed our support as part of our group initiative for our clients, where we want to help them beyond just setup, right? So that's what we've done with Creative Zone. And to give you a background about myself, I've been in this industry for more than 10 years. I am an ACCA fellow chartered accountant now, a CMA as well, and also a UACA as well. So that's a little bit about myself.
Thank you, Zishan. Again, we have our head of tax at Creative Zone Tax and Accounting, Mohammed Al Said. So over to you to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Lina. So my name is Mohammed Al Said. I am the head of tax at Creative Zone Tax and Accounting. I'm as well accredited tax agent from the Federal Tax Authority. Have been accredited since 2018, since the start of the VAT, with an experience over 7 years in the tax field, with former employee of the Federal Tax Authority as well. We are helping our clients with being compliant with all the taxes in the EU in terms of the VAT, excise tax, and the corporate tax as well.
Thank you, Mohammed. I can see a lot of questions coming in already. So let's take it in stage, I would say, because this is a new concept. There's a lot of whys, hows, whats, whens about this whole topic. So what is corporate tax? Who wants to start? Zishan, what is corporate tax?
Well, I'll give a background of why corporate tax was introduced, and then I'll leave it to our expert tax advisor to introduce corporate tax a little bit more. So what UAE has done is they've introduced corporate tax to be acknowledged on a fair level, on the global level as well, by the global authorities as well, because if you stay as a tax-free haven, then you get labeled as a country where it's not fair to the other entities or the other jurisdictions. So that's why corporate tax was introduced by the EU authorities. But the good thing is that they've introduced it at 9%, which is one of the lowest rates in the whole world, especially the region and the whole world as well. And one more thing, just to add before I hand it over to Mohammed, is they've made corporate tax very easy. It's not as complex as other jurisdictions, which have multiple filing periods, multiple payment periods, different calculation systems, and they've also given reliefs and incentives to SMEs, more targeted towards SMEs. So it's made it very easy for people to accept it, to use it, to be compliant with it.
Right. I'm sure to see there's a lot of updates coming in about the small business reliefs and the qualifying business activities. We'll definitely get back to that. Mohammed, anything to add on corporate tax and why and how and when and stuff?
Yeah. So the corporate tax was introduced in the UAE with effective date of June 23. The reason behind the corporate tax, there have been a pressure on the UAE as it's part of the OECD framework, as a member of the OECD, to have a corporate tax here. And this is, we can look as well as a positive side of it, that many of the entities would be able to benefit from double tax agreements. This would have as well a positive impact for the companies in the UAE. It's not only a liability, but it can also be of a good impact if you do proper structuring, proper preparation for the corporate tax. It would be good benefit for some of the businesses. And the regime that was introduced in the UAE is very competitive regime, very friendly with the taxpayers, and there is no advance payments required. It's very competitive compared to the whole world.
It's very straightforward.
It's very straightforward. There have been some exemptions and some reliefs for small businesses, as Dishan mentioned, relief for small businesses, relief for individuals as well, some activities that are exempt. This is all in order to make sure that the UAE stay a competitive market compared to the whole world.
So when it comes to, you said individuals, I mean, if they have like an earning salary or an investment income, would they have to register for corporate tax like individuals?
No, if individual is having a salary or any income from employment, this is not going to be taxable. They are not going to be required to register or comply with the corporate tax.
Okay.
However, if the individual has an activity, business activity, and generates income of more than 1 million dirham per year, would need to register for corporate tax and submit annual return.
Okay. All right. So we saw that VAT was implemented before, right? Now many companies have already registered for VAT. Now, do these companies have to register for corporate tax separately? Or now, again, one more question to that. I haven't, my income is less than 375,000 dirhams a year. So I don't have a VAT account. Now, is my company liable to register for corporate tax, or can I get away with it?
Okay. Regarding the VAT and corporate tax, there are totally different taxes. The VAT is an indirect tax based on the transactions. The corporate tax is a direct tax that is based on the net profit of the company. So if you have a VAT number, doesn't mean that you don't need to register for corporate tax. You would need to register for corporate tax separately. Also, the registration for corporate tax, unlike the VAT, is not if you exceed the threshold you register. All the businesses will need to register unless if there is an exemption or exception for this specific category of business.
All right. Anything to add, Zishan?
Yeah. So like you said, the second part of the question, where if you have a business which does not generate 375 revenue, would you still have to register? Yes. For corporate tax, whether you are generating any revenue, whether you're not, whether you're not doing anything, you still have to do three things: registration, maintain books, and filing for corporate tax. Those are compulsory for each person, even if they're qualifying for zero or whatever the case might be. Those three things are standard for everyone.
Okay, so those are the basic steps. And as an individual, I'm a one-man business owner. So am I in a position to file corporate tax on my own, or do I actually need assistance or guidance to do this?
So definitely it should be done by professional people.
Okay.
But it's not like you can't do it.
Okay.
If you are, for example, a chartered accountant might open up his own business.
Yes.
He might be able to do this on his own because he would understand the laws, the regulations, and the financial standards that are supposed to be used to calculate maintain your books and calculate your return, liability, and all of that. But if you do not have the knowledge, the technical knowledge, it is best to have it done by a professional. That is how you will make sure that you are efficient, you do things properly, and you do not have any non-compliance matters that lead up to penalties or any other issues.
Do we have any penalties announced so far?
So as of now, there's no penalties announced yet, but we're expecting it to be done soon, as soon as, you know.
Is there like a deadline? I mean, for what is the financial year, and when do I have to file my corporate tax?
So
I get a lot of questions on when is the deadline, or what is the, another question was, when is the deadline to register for corporate tax? Do you have any answer for that?
Sure. So the financial year for the companies, usually it's mentioned in the memorandum of association or articles of association. Most of the companies in the UAE, it's January to December, unless it's mentioned otherwise. So if it's mentioned in the memorandum, you follow whatever is in the memorandum. If not, you follow the financial year that you are using to close your accounting records. Let's say it's not mentioned in your memorandum, but you are closing your accounting records from January to December. So you follow this year, and during the registration for the corporate tax, you will be required to define this financial year, and then you will follow it. Regarding the registration, there is no deadline announced yet. You can register up to the deadline of the filing of the corporate tax.
Okay. Anything from your side, Zishan?
No, I think this is a very common question that we get from every person that is new to this idea of corporate tax. And even if we answer it today, I'm sure tomorrow there will be more people asking the same question again.
Yesterday I got an email when we were sending out the reminders and stuff. So a gentleman called Manal had asked, okay, our company, which is a strategic and management advisory firm, is registered under Maidan Freezone, which was registered in March 2022. Okay, so how do you determine our financial year? Again, as you said, you have to refer to the memorandum of association for that. Okay,
correct.
And is it automatically ending December 31st?
So it will be mentioned in the memorandum
again,
the financial year, and for the first financial year, usually it's saying that from the incorporation of the company until the end of the year, which is December, but it should not be less than 6 months or more than 18 months. So first year for him, if the memorandum says that January to December, first year will be March to December 22, and then you follow Jan to December.
Okay, all right. But again, he says the company has not started operation yet. So does that, I mean, when do we have to register? So does it make any difference? So if you register a company, you have to register a corporate tax account or something, right?
Corporate tax registration is still required regardless of the revenue or the profit.
Okay, all right. Okay, so that's regarding, the filing of corporate tax, which is, I mean, I see there's a lot of questions on, they're saying the sound is not clear. If we can check on that. Just let us know in the chats if you're able to hear us. Again, coming to the rates and threshold of corporate tax, you said it's a 9%. So how is it calculated? Is it calculated on the gross profit, net profit, or can you give a bit of an explanation there?
Yeah, the corporate tax is applied on the net profit of the company. However, as we mentioned, the competitive regime of the UAE, there is a relief for the first 375,000 dirhams of net profit. You don't pay tax on that. You pay 9% on whatever above 375,000 dirhams. If we give an example of a business making net profit for the first financial year of 400,000 dirhams, the first 375,000 will be taxed at 0%.
Tax free, okay.
Yeah, the 25,000 will be taxed at 9%.
Okay, so it's whatever you make after the 375 threshold will be the taxable amount.
Correct.
At 9%. Okay, and this is the net profit. So that's after the operating cost, everything, right?
Yes, it's net profit that is usually in the profit and loss statement after your revenue minus your expenses, the eligible expenses.
So you'll have to show the details of your operating cost, right? Now,
Yeah.
again, coming to that, if there are salaried people in my company, right? Now, if I choose to give myself, who's the owner of the company, a higher salary, that's going to reduce my overall net profit, right? So can I do, workaways or something like that to reduce my taxable income?
This is
I mean, these
yeah.
are questions coming in.
Sure. This is a very common question that we get every day from our
Or I can
clients.
increase my expense, my staff expense. I mean, I put a budget for that, so it's literally bringing down my operating cost.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how would you advise on, about these?
This is a very common situation from our clients that they think that this is doable, but if you put yourself a salary as a director of the company, this salary needs to be in line with the market salaries for someone in your position in a company in the same volume as your company. So this is something that needs to be taken into consideration. You will not be able to just increase your salary to match the profit, so you will not be paying taxes.
So please note that it's an important note.
In addition to this, we would expect as well the FTA to issue some guidelines for calculating and comparing these salaries. It's not going to be left free.
Okay, yeah. I'm sure, yes.
Yeah. So just to add to the second part of your question, if you can increase expenses or artificially reduce your profit, that would not be advisable. That would not be the right thing to do. First, because your entertainment expenses are capped at only 50% of it.
Okay.
So yes, you can choose to increase your entertainment expenses as much as you want, but 50% of that will be taken as eligible expenses.
Okay.
But there will also be an element of anti-abuse that comes into place. You're not supposed to just have expenses just for the sake of reducing your profit, and that will come into kind of going into the fraud kind of an element. But that is, we advise strongly against that. Only the expenses that are for business use are going to be allowed as deductible.
Okay, all right. No, thank you for that, because I am getting a lot of questions in this line from the audience. Again, so we had come to, there's a lot of questions again. I'm having a freelancer license. I'm a freelancer. Now, am I, should I also file for corporate tax? How does that work? I'm not sure how, so, the freelance license, the Freezone license, is it different, or how do we go about this?
If you are a freelancer, you act on your own personal capacity. There is exception for that. If your revenue up to 1 million dirham, you wouldn't need to register or file for corporate tax. Okay. This is for individuals. This is applicable for freelancers, but it wouldn't be applicable, for example, for an LLC that is only owned by one person, because this has a separate legal entity from the person himself.
Right. Okay, so it's two different.
There is relief for the individuals if you act on your own name as a natural person, as an individual with a freelancer permit.
Okay.
Then you are considered individual. You can benefit from the relief.
Okay.
But if you have a company that has a separate legal entity from yourself,
it's different.
XYZ company, then this does not apply for a company, because it's a legal entity, not individual.
Yes. Okay, got it. Again, coming back to the previous question, we have one more. Is there a permissible amount of salary for directors as per corporate tax? Again, as you mentioned, it's the threshold. I mean, it's by industry standards, or is there like a maximum threshold?
Yes, as Mohammed said, they will have to be in accordance with whatever the market rate would be for a similar role, similar company, and whatever the activities are being done by that. So it has to be taken in respect of the market rate. Right. There could be benchmarking activities or services that you could benchmark that a certain person in a certain role, in a certain industry with this much size of a company will be around this range. That is what is going to be considered at the end of the day.
Okay. So again, we have some questions like, is the medical insurance of the director and the families calculated as operating costs?
So these questions,
I know there'll be hundreds of questions, but I'm just taking this one. Again, I mean, we'll have a one-on-one session because it just came up. So even I wanted to know, actually, is it?
I would suggest to go through these expenses by case, because it depends. But usually for employees, yes, it can be. For families, it's
No.
not
Okay.
not sure that it will be acceptable.
Okay, right. Let's stop with those questions now. Again, coming to free zones. Okay, there's a lot of discussions happening on the free zone entities. Are they taxable? Are they not? What is small business relief? What is for qualifying activities? Who want to go with this first? Mohammed?
Sure, no problem. So the law has provisions for the free zones to benefit from 0% corporate tax in terms of the qualifying income.
Mhm.
For a free zone to benefit from that, it needs to satisfy some conditions. The first condition would be to maintain adequate substance to drive qualifying income, and not to elect to be taxable under the corporate tax, and also to comply with transfer pricing guidelines and arm's length transfer. If we take point by point, maintaining adequate substance means that the free zone needs to have her core income generated from the free zone itself.
Mm-hmm.
That when you are a free zone, you are generating the income from inside the free zone. You have adequate number of qualified employees. You have adequate expenses to the income that you are generating.
Okay.
This is about maintaining adequate substance, driving qualifying income. So when a free zone is dealing with other free zone, this can be a qualifying income. But if this is in terms of the qualifying activities and not excluded activities, please.
Yeah, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, the law mentioned some activities that would be excluded from the qualifying income.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are a free zone dealing with other free zone in terms of qualifying income, not excluded, this can be 0%. If you deal with a non-free zone person
Mm-hmm.
for qualifying activity,
Right.
this can be as well, and the any other income, but meeting the de minimis threshold, which is 5% of the turnover.
Okay.
Or 5 million, whatever is the lower.
Okay, Zishan, do you want to add into that?
He's put it very well. There is just a list of these two lists that he mentioned, excluded activities.
Yeah, do we have
Yes.
examples of that, like excluded, and what are the qualifying activities?
Yes. So, for example, one of the activities in the excluded activities is banking activities,
Okay.
which are regulated as well. Insurance activities. There are about 5-6 activities in the excluded list
Mhm.
that are excluded. So, if any free zone person is doing any work other than the excluded activities, that is, as you mentioned, would be considered as qualifying income. The other list is the qualified activities.
Mhm.
Those are about 10 to 15 qualifying activities, and which have things like holding shares, doing investments, fund management, treasury activities, treasury and finance activities with related people, logistics as well.
Mhm.
So these are some of the examples in that list that is called qualifying activities. Doing business in these activities with a non-free zone person,
Mhm.
as you mentioned, is also going to be considered as qualifying income.
Okay. All right. And is it something to do with the small business relief, or that's something completely different?
This is completely different.
Okay. So can you give us more insights on what is a small business relief and how can one avail that, and who is eligible to apply for that?
Sure. The small business relief was a relief for small businesses in the UAE with the turnover up to 3 million a year. So if your company makes turnover of up to 3 million a year, you can elect to benefit from the small business relief, given that you are not a qualifying free zone. So if you want to benefit from the small business relief, you will not be electing to be a qualifying free zone. You can benefit of one of both. You cannot benefit from the two regimes together. Businesses up to 3 million can elect to apply for that, and they will not be taxable at any of their income.
Okay, and so if you opted for small business relief, you can't opt for the free zone, the qualifying.
Yeah.
So see, the qualifying free zone, that's kind of tax-free for the rest of your life, right?
If you maintain all the criteria,
Yeah,
if you qualify for all the criteria, then you maintain it as long as the authorities have those agreements with the free zone.
Okay, and what about the small business? I think there's there's a deadline for it, right?
The small business relief is available up to 26.
2026.
Yes.
So, okay, up to 2026, I can apply for that. And after that, my business will be taxable again. At 9%.
We are not sure if it's
Okay.
going to be extended or it's going
Right.
to be like up to now in the law,
Mm-hmm.
it's up to 26.
2026.
One thing to note here in terms of the small business or the free zone, it's not by default.
Okay.
You need to elect to benefit from these regimes. So if you want to benefit from the small business, there would be a mechanism to apply for the small business relief. It's not by default that
Right,
because
you
we
get
know
qualified for it,
some
no.
of the businesses will assume
They
I
are.
am not making 3 million. I don't need to register. I don't need to submit anything, which is not correct.
Okay.
You need to register. You need to apply to benefit from the regime.
So how do you, is there like a portal that you can go and apply, or?
It's with the Federal Tax Authority. Up to now,
Okay.
the process to benefit from the small business relief is not yet clarified from the
Okay.
tax authority. However, we expect soon this will be clarified.
Okay. All right. Anything else from your side, Zishan?
No, I just would want to stress on this same point
Yeah.
that regardless of you meeting criteria for qualifying for any benefit, incentive,
Mhm.
whatever, you still have to make sure you register for corporate tax on the portal itself.
Okay.
There is no default or assumptions that you should make that, okay, I qualify for one criteria or the other or other, so I may not need to do this. Registration is mandatory, whichever relief you fall under.
Okay. Now my question, we have secret, we have entrepreneur set up business. Now, even before setting up a business, can I plan my taxes, or plan the jurisdiction that I want to go with so that I can reduce or minimize my tax, returns?
It would be suggested to plan your taxes in order to have the proper structure to
Mhm.
get the best benefit out of the regime, whether you need to have a mainland branch and the free zone entity, whether you need to have any of the structures in place. This is something that's suggested for all the businesses before even structuring their
Mhm.
business to help them get the best benefit, to also understand their compliances,
Mhm.
if they need to comply with transfer pricing or not, what are the requirements in terms of you need an audit for the qualifying free zone or not. All of this would be suggested for the businesses before even starting, so you wouldn't have any issues with the compliance, you wouldn't face any penalties or complications.
Right, and your team would assist with this pre-business consultation, right, if need be.
Yeah, we do assist our clients with the pre-implementation
Right.
Assessment. We have assessment packages that we offer to our clients in terms of the impact of the corporate tax suggestions and any improvements that we see that can be done to the structure.
Potentially advise. So I think it's always better to get a consultation first before even getting started to set up a business. So they do offer, services on pre-business setup consultation we don't know what's coming up next, right? So it's always good to be prepared and minimize as much as expenses as possible as we go forward, right? Okay, so I'll just take some questions from the audience now. Now I have a gentleman asking, regardless its income or if the company only does business outside UAE or company income is salary of the owner, does a free zone company require to report authority?
So okay, there are two different things
Yes.
in this. One is whether that person, if the company is earning income from outside UAE, how does that?
Yes.
So now, what the decision or what's been, issue, it's mentions only non-free zone person. If it's a qualified person, then you have to look at whether that income from outside, where is it going to be labeled as.
Okay.
Right? So as a qualified free zone person, that would be considered in the non-free zone person tab. Those clients, they'll be considered as non-free zone. So you would have to see whether that activity is qualified activity or not. If it's not going to be a qualified activity, then it will be considered as a non-qualifying income. But if it's a qualified activity, then it would be considered as a qualifying income. So it has to be looked at what exactly is the nature of their business.
Right.
And the other situation, if that person is mainly earning income, that is mostly considered to be his salary. First thing, like Mohammed has said, that the salary has to be on the market level, has to be on that range. If it's more, then it will have issues. But if you're earning income and taking out the complete income as salary, essentially your profits will be zero. So corporate tax, how it applies will matter on what is your final net profit.
Okay. Anything from your side, Mohammed?
Just one thing to highlight again is that regardless of this, you would need to register for corporate tax.
There you go.
Yeah.
So that's the bottom line. Regardless, no income coming in, only one person, anything. If you have a registered company, you have to file for corporate tax.
Correct.
Okay. And then comes whether you can apply for the benefits or I mean, it's a separate. First step is registering and then go for the next process.
Yes, please.
All right. Now, for companies that are registered and required to file returns, should the financials be signed off by a CA?
By a CA?
Yeah, a chartered accountant too.
As for now, the law does not require the companies to have their financials signed by a CA or
Okay.
have it audited. For normal conditions, you can do your financials. If you are a qualified accountant, you can do your financials properly as per the IFRS. You can submit it yourself. It's not a must to have it done through a chartered accountant or through tax agency up to now. So this is something is not a must for now.
Mhm.
Only the qualifying free zones will need to submit audited financial statements from approved auditor in the UAE.
Right, right. All right. And again, we're getting this question. I think we're still not clear, okay, on this. Please advise which are the UAE free zones that offer 0% full tax exemption. There is no free zone that allows it, right? It's just the income and okay, I'll leave it to you to explain because we're still getting questions.
Yeah.
I mean, which free zone gives me 0% tax?
The law doesn't give an ultimate 0% to any of the free zones.
Yeah.
It depends on the activities that you are conducting. If you conduct one of the qualifying activities, then you would be able to benefit from 0% if you satisfy the conditions. So there is no ultimate 0% for any of the free zones in the UAE. And this is not coming from the free zone itself. It's coming from the tax law that gives specific exceptions for this 0%. It's not open-ended for the free zones.
And it's the UAE law, right? Not every jurisdiction or emirate will have a separate rule for this.
The corporate tax is a federal law, which is applicable to all the emirates, including all the free zones.
Mainlands and free zones. All right. There's one question about tax group. Okay. So an individual A owns company X, Y, and Z. I love the example how they're writing. Now, can these three companies form a tax group? And if not, is it possible to transfer the loss of one company to the other company to minimize the whole tax returns?
So there are provisions in the law for companies to form a tax group for the corporate tax purposes. There are some conditions to be met to be able to form a tax group. One of the conditions is that one of the companies owns 95% of the other company. There are other conditions as well. So if you satisfy the conditions to form a tax group, yes, it's available in the corporate tax law.
Okay. And as you mentioned, can we transfer the loss of one? I mean, one company is doing extremely well while the other is doing extremely bad. So can we?
So yes, in a tax group, you can have your tax losses adjusted with each other because as part of your tax group, you have to file one consolidated return.
Okay.
So it already becomes consolidated and gets adjusted for that.
Okay.
If you are not a tax group, then there's no possibility of having it adjusted to another entity's tax.
Right. Okay, got it. Again, do you still need to register if you are a free zone company? I'll answer that. Yes, you have to register. So registering for corporate tax is mandatory. Then comes whether you follow the incentives that is offered for 0% taxation, which we've been explaining throughout this webinar. Next one, for a corporate tax requirement, is it mandatory to have audit reports for X years? I mean, I've been running my business for, say, example, 5 years. Now, do I have to show my audit statements for the previous years, or how do I start now?
There is no requirement to submit any previous audited financial statements for previous years. The audit requirement will be only for the qualifying free zone in terms of their first taxable year.
Okay. So
previous years are not required.
Okay. That's it, right? Okay. And See, all the properties are at book value, which was purchased long back, not as market value. If we do a revaluation, what will be the implication after corporate tax? Did you understand the question, or because even I'm kind of confused?
No, a little bit you can understand. For regarding the assets held before the corporate tax effective date, there are transitional provisions for the asset valuation and how to book it in the financial state. So there are some provisions in the law for this all transitional provisions.
Okay. And what if the memorandum of association does not specify the accounting period? Will that be a case? I mean, can the company use Jan to December as a default?
There are some free zones that they don't have the financial year mentioned in their memorandum or articles. In this case, you follow the financial year that you used to prepare your accounting records, and the most probably would be January
to
December.
Yeah. Okay. Again, we have a lot of questions actually. We'll take it one by one. We do have time. Again, we have like around 20 minutes left. So another one. Will any reduction be announced for trade license fees or other government fees that need to be paid by companies already? Tricky one.
This is something that goes back to the Freezone itself. Whether
So let's leave it to the free zones to decide on that. We will make a survey and submit it so that if you never know, what if they give us some incentives, right? Again, is there a specified depreciation or amortization period acceptable for calculating corporate tax liability?
Usually for the corporate tax liability calculation, you follow the IFRS standards. So it's in the International Financial Reporting Standards. So you follow this for the preparation of your financial statements. So there is nothing specific for this, but you follow the international standards.
Okay, all right. And see, all these bonuses and incentives paid for employees, again, that's part of your operating expenses, right?
Yes, but it should be reasonable.
Amount.
And especially when it comes to salaries or bonuses or any transactions with connected persons. For example, you are owner of the company, are allocating a bonus for your son or for a relative. This would need to be looked at from a transfer pricing point of view.
And this will be properly audited, right? I mean, when you submit.
This would be properly looked at from the Federal Tax Authority.
Again, there's a question. Please clarify the 50% expense eligibility rule. Can you just explain a bit more on that?
So basically, it's the 50% cap is on the entertainment expense.
Oh, okay, entertainment.
So entertainment expenses only. So if you have expenses where you take a client to dinner or do any entertainment activities for your employees or suppliers or anything like that, only 50% of that will be allowed under the law.
Okay. And one more question. What does it mean by electing a qualifying free zone?
So electing means that you apply to the tax authority to benefit from the provisions for the qualifying free zone, which is to benefit from the 0% corporate tax in terms of the qualifying income.
Okay, all right. Okay, so let's go back. There's a lot of questions. I just need to go through them because there's so many coming in. Again,
this is what highlights how hot of a topic this is.
I mean, it's just flooded, the whole chat box. Yeah. So let's go back now about ensuring that your company is compliant to all these tax regulations. Is there any? I mean, do we have to plan ahead? I mean, how can businesses ensure a proper tax planning and optimization? It's looked into.
Businesses first starts to look at their structure, how the corporate tax will impact them, how the tax liability is going to be based on their structure. If there are any modifications or improvement to be done to the structure, of course, we should note that it's not something that against the anti-abuse provisions. So, like, you don't restructure in order to get benefit from the corporate tax in a negative way or in a way that is not according to the laws. In this case, the anti-abuse provisions would apply. But normally, the companies should look at their structures, plan ahead how the corporate tax can affect them, make sure that their financial statements are being maintained properly, register for corporate tax, and then it would be an ongoing process looking at their financial statements, the eligible expenses, and all of these details.
Okay, Zishan?
Yeah, I just want to add one more point on the assessment part of things. This assessment should be done in a long-term manner. You have to look at your long-term goals, your long-term operational forecasts before you implement things. Because once you fall out of one of the reliefs, for example, the qualified Freezone person relief, then it can be reapplied to you after 5 years. So you have to make sure your structures are set in place properly so that you can continue to take advantage of the release of the benefits allowed in the regulations.
Right, got it. So basically, be on top of your activity, your jurisdiction, everything, so you're compliant. Again, there's some confusion here on the freelancer bit of things and free zone. So are freelancers entitled to register for corporate tax?
Okay, freelancers, if we define freelancer, is a person who's acting on his own name. For example, you, Neha, you have a freelancer permit, you are acting on your own name. There is no company, there is no
associated with
your name. There's no legal separate structure from yourself. In this case, you are acting on your natural name, on your individual. In this case, there is a relief if your turnover up to 1 million dirham. If you have up to 1 million dirham, then you don't need to register for corporate tax or pay any taxes.
I mean, do I have to still register or don't register at all?
If you are up to 1 million, you don't need to register.
Okay, so this is only for freelancers acting as an individual under your own name, and if your income doesn't exceed 1 million, then you don't have to register for corporate tax. But if it exceeds 1 million, you have to register for corporate tax under your name.
Correct.
Right. Okay. So I think there was a bit of a
slight confusion. So basically, this freelancer permit is basically a permit for an individual to conduct business activities. Right. This and then other example is, I think, the sole proprietor license that is available. In these instances, an individual is permitted to conduct business activities. If that happens and you cross 1 million, then you have to register.
Okay.
If not, then you're still conducting business activities as an individual. Hence, if you're below that revenue threshold, you don't need to.
But do I have to submit any proof or something for that?
Authorities can ask.
Okay.
They
so
can
be ready.
ask. Yeah. So they can ask. Maintaining books is something that you have to do.
Okay.
Regardless of
it, right? Yeah, you never
it helps
know.
with your business planning as well, or your your daily day-to-day activities, how to go about them, what to do.
Okay. Now there's a question. What if additionally to company, and I have a monthly salary from another company, is that taxable? So in case you understood the question.
Okay, so this depends on how it's structured. If you are under employment contract with the company and you receive a salary that based on an employment contract under the Ministry of Labor, then this is not taxable. There is no tax on the salaries. Right. But if you are talking that you have a company and you are providing services to another company and you invoice for that, this became a business activity and this would be, yes, taxable and you would need to register.
Okay, so it's nothing to do with income tax. I mean, there's nothing, taxable on the income that you receive. It's only the company that you own and the profits that you get from that is taxable.
Yes, correct. So the taxes on the salaries, personal salaries are not taxable.
Okay.
Company's business activity is taxable.
Right. As you explained, businesses having turnover beyond 1 million need to be registered. Okay. Now, what if a company having a turnover of 1.2 million and having a profit of 400,000? No, 4 million. In such a case, the 25,000 is subjected to tax.
So before we answer this question, I want to correct one thing.
Yeah.
The question said if the business is earning. So if it's a business, then you have to do registration regardless of the threshold.
Right.
But what I think that the audience member meant was if it's an individual, only then the 1 million threshold applies.
Okay.
So if it's an individual earning that income from a business activity, then yes, after 1 million you would have to register, and no matter what your profit is, you will have to file the returns as well.
Okay. All right. Anything from your side, Mohammed?
I think Zishan clarified this question. Yeah.
All right. Now, how do I know if the auditor has the necessary permits to do audit of my financials? Any tips you can share?
Yeah, usually the auditors are accredited from the Ministry of Economy. They
Okay.
have accreditation number, and you would be listed with the Ministry of Economy. If you want to verify that, you would be able to verify it because they have accreditation number. It's the same like a qualified accountant who has his membership.
Okay. All right. I'm a UK resident and hold real estate property here directly and through Freezone companies. What is the tax effect in UAE and UK?
So for an individual, one of the things that is not taxable is the salaries. The other two things that are not taxable is the investments that they do in their personal
Personal.
name and any real estate investments that they have. So these three things are overall, as an individual, not taxable.
Okay.
So it's the same thing. If you are doing one of these three, that's not taxable as an individual. If you're doing it as a business, then that will be taxable.
Oh, geez. Okay. All right. So for the real estate part, if it's through your personal dealings, it's not taxable, but it's only the business that's being taxable here. Okay. If my company accounts run from Jan to December, when should I register? Is there a deadline for registration? When should I register my?
So now the registration is available up to the deadline of the submission of the first corporate tax return. So if your financial year is January to December, and first financial year that's taxable for you, January to December 24,
Okay.
the deadline for the corporate tax return, first return will be before September 25.
Okay.
You have all up to this all time to
September 2024.
25.
25. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. That's a long time.
Yeah.
Okay.
The regime here was structured to give
Ample time
to
plan.
And
To absorb the new.
Up to this time, we don't expect there would be penalties, but
Okay.
it's suggested to start the registration from now, to start to have your company planned for the corporate tax and ready,
Right.
not to be in a rush before the deadline.
I know this. I mean, the deadline is quite, prolonged now. It's so September 2025.
Exactly.
But don't you think that people will just, I mean, is it better? Is there any advantage that if you start right now or later or?
So for registrations, right now the only registrations open are for mainland entities.
Okay, so
Right.
Freezone
So
is
yeah,
not open yet.
it's not open yet. So once they're open, they will probably be done at that point. But like Mohammed said, that there's no deadline for registration. However, it is implied because of the deadline for the for this corporate tax return. As the corporate tax return is within 9 months of your financial year end. So in this case, if it's a Jan to December, your deadline will be September 25 for your return. And it is required that you, logically speaking, it's required that you need to be registered to file a return. So automatically that becomes your deadline to register.
So first it's registration, then comes filing.
Maintaining books is one another thing that I make sure I reiterate to everyone that that's a compulsory thing as well. And then the third thing is maintaining or filing your returns.
So that's last step. And filing returns, the deadline is September 2025. But prior to that, you have to do the first two steps.
Yeah,
right.
But this deadline is applicable only to companies with the financial year January to December.
Oh, okay.
If financial year is June, starting from June, then it will be different deadlines. It's 9 months from the end of the financial year.
Okay, so it'll be a different deadline. So just make sure, check your memorandum of association, check your date, right? That's where they can find the financial year. And just consult, experts like them, so that at least you're compliant and you don't attract any fines, because I'm sure there's a lot of more updates that's going to come up over the course of time, right? So there's one more question. There's more, but let's address, because we're running close to time. What is the rule around number of years that financials and relevant supporting documentation has to be retained for any assessment that the FTA would conduct? You mentioned this already, right?
Yeah. So the documents, any documents, financial statement, it needs to be maintained for 7 years under the corporate tax law. The tax authority has the right to come back to you for 7 years to request any documents related to the corporate tax return, whether it's the financial statements, the invoices, the supporting for the expenses. All these can be asked for 7 years.
Perfect. So it's very important to maintain the books.
Sure, it's essential.
Okay. So I will that too, and we are bookkeeping services too. Again, what other requirements for corporate tax registration? I heard UBO is needed. How do you get a document for UBO?
So UBO is basically your ultimate beneficiary. In any company, there is going to be someone who is the ultimate beneficiary. You have to identify if it's a simple case of one person owning in running that entity, that person is a UBO. If it is a multiple layer of corporates, individuals, all of that, you still have to identify who is the ultimate beneficiary. And then you have to, while doing the registration, there is a section which asks about your ultimate beneficiary, who is the authorized person, and who's the manager. So you have managed.
Okay, perfect. No, I can see this is all responding to questions that I mean, when there's no date mentioned on the association directly from Dan,
I just one thing I would say, if you're sure, you also check the Freezone what is the default thing that they've mentioned. And if not, just to be clear, maybe have a board resolution which mentions that.
Okay, so just check with these options,
Exactly.
ensuring you're well on time. Is a sole establishment, does a sole establishment need to take corporate tax registration?
Sole establishment, as we mentioned, is considered like an individual. Sole establishment does not have separate legal identity from the owner. So if it qualifies to 1 million threshold, then it doesn't need to register. If it exceeds the threshold, it will need to register.
Okay. So it's still coming back to the same concept again. All right. And see, we're actually running out of time. So there's more. I'm sure there's more questions that you have in mind. So, please feel free to contact us and ask us. We'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions. We could also send a link on the box. So there it gives you a brief if you want to calculate your your tax. It's I mean, it's there. Register, and we will get back to you to address any of your questions. Yeah. So because I'm not in a position to take all the questions, so that's why. Since we're running out of time. Again, so just like a conclusion kind of a word, how does the new corporate tax policy align with the UAE's overall economic vision and goals? Go for it.
You go.
So it aligns for the UAE as a whole. Like I said, when starting this was because it has to be treated on a fair basis on a global level as well. It has to be.
One second, Zishan, the sound is really bad. We're checking. Okay, fine.
Okay. So it's basically to make sure that UAE is also in those same high standards on the global level, and it attracts those audiences as well. So that's why it is very important for them to have this. And like I said, it's very easy regime here compared to rest of the world. So they've kept it very competitive. They've kept it easy to comply with. It's not too much of a hassle. And if you look at it at UAE as a whole, for a business opportunity where you should set up your entity, you have low taxes and you can benefit from the double taxation treaties from all over the world. So, and UAE has a lot of double taxation treaties with most of the countries. So that's a positive thing. But just to conclude on this whole corporate tax thing, please make sure first thing is do an assessment for your company. If you are planning to open up a company, do an assessment to make sure you have the right structure in place to maximize your tax efficiency. And then once you've done with that, have registrations done, your corporate tax registration, the maintaining of books, and then filing your return. These are the 3 compliance structures and steps that you have to take. But an assessment is very key for any business, whether you are planning to set up or you've already set up.
Yes, Mohammed, on your side, closing words, the wisest words.
Yeah, we would suggest that all our clients and whoever is not even our clients to maintain the accounting records properly according to the IFRS, start the registration and start having assessment done to their business, how the corporate tax will impact them, looking at their future goals, if they have any plans for expansions, to open subsidiaries, to open branches. All this would need to be looked at from the corporate tax point of view. Have everything in advance ready, so you wouldn't have any issues with compliances, you wouldn't face any penalties or issues.
Okay, there was another chat window that had tons of other questions, but I'm sure we've kind of addressed almost all of the questions. I mean, it's been, I think, revolving around the same concept. So again, this webinar, yes, it is being recorded, so you can go to channels, and we'll be sending an email with all the details, and you will be getting access to whatever was discussed today. Again, I'm sorry if I haven't addressed any of the questions. I know there's a lot. So do feel free to, put in your requests on the link provided by the team, and we'll definitely get back to you. So just take as a one-on-one consultation. So it'd be better for, I mean, I know every business is different, so your questions would be different. So this was just an overview of, the common questions that we had. And yes, so if you have, just feel free to drop in your questions in the link provided, by the tech team. Yeah, it's been put up in the chat window, so you can go and put your questions there. All right. Thank you so much, Zishan and Mohammed, for your expert advice and all the knowledge that you've shared. It's been a very, very informative session, and I'm sure even the audience have gained a lot of insights and cleared most of their doubts. And I'm sure, but still, there'll be 100 questions coming thrown your way. So be prepared. After this webinar, I'm sure you'll get a lot of questions. We have a whole team here who will be addressing your questions. It's not just the two of them. We have like a team of what, 30, 40?
Yeah.
So yes, so we are fully equipped to answer all your questions. And yes, thank you so much for being a great audience. And we look forward to doing more sessions in the future.
Thank you, Neha, and thank you everyone else for joining us. One thing, even now you are aware that corporate tax registrations are mandatory for everyone.
Now
So
everybody knows.
but this question will still be asked.
Exactly.
So
I mean, finding our ways to get away with it. People love to hear you're exempted from corporate tax. I mean, till I hear that, I think people will still ask. But however, I mean,
this will happen. This is okay. This will happen even throughout this year. So new people will come. New people will ask the same questions. It will keep happening, and the regime will also get mature and mature, and it will keep evolving. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much again. Thank you, Mohammed.
Thank you, Neha. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.